So because the king became a disciple of the Buddha, and he had so many Arahant disciples, that slowly his reputation started to grow. And then this Sariputta and Moggallana came to become disciples of the Buddha. And how did they become disciples? At that time, before they followed the Buddha, they were renunciants under an external sect ascetic by the name of Sanjaya. And Sariputta was called Upatissa in his lay life. And Moggallana was called Kolita. Now, remember this Sariputta, as an external sect ascetic, he was going on alms round. And he met this Venerable Asaji. Asaji was one of the earliest 5 bhikkhus under the Buddha. So Venerable Asaji was an Arahant. And when Venerable Sariputta walked on alms round, he met this Venerable Asaji. First time he had seen an Arahant, he was totally struck by the looks of Venerable Asaji. He didn't look like a normal person. His face was so serene and so bright and clear. He was so impressed. So the Buddha, this Venerable Sariputta asked the Venerable Asaji in the middle of the street, as he was going on alms round. He said, "Who is your teacher? What kind of Dhamma does your teacher teach?" Then the Venerable Asaji said that his teacher was the Buddha. Then he said, as to the Dhamma, I am newly gone forth in this Dhamma Vinaya. And I can't tell you, I cannot give you a very good explanation of the Dhamma, but I can only give you a brief teaching. Then the Venerable Sariputta said, a brief teaching is enough. So basically what he said to Venerable Sariputta was that all things in the world arise through conditions and they pass away through conditions. In Chinese they say, 诸法因缘生，诸法因缘灭. So just listening to these few words, Venerable Sariputta realized that everything in the world arises through conditions and passes away through conditions. That means everything is impermanent. And just by that, he attained the Dhamma vision, attained the first path. So you see, what basically makes a person a first path attainer is to understand that everything in the world is impermanent. Everything in the world comes about through conditions. Conditions, whatever it is, whether you see it's a cup. This cup was not like this before. It was probably earth. And earth was not like that before. That earth probably came from trees and leaves that accumulated on the ground. And the trees and leaves that accumulated on the ground was not like that before. There probably was a mineral from the ground and all that, and the sunlight and the oxygen and all that made up this tree. And so it's a continuous process. Everything in the world continually changes. Like this body. This body, this flesh comes from where? From all the food we take, yes or not? From the rice, from the vegetable, etc. And where did all this come from? From different sources again. So everything is energy that is constantly changing. This because energy is in constant motion. That's why there is no such thing as something that remains the same as it is. Everything is in a state of flux, constant change. And this constant change of energy can take many forms. Just like through conditions, you see a plant coming up with a flower. And because the flower is beautiful, you like to look at the flower. You want to appreciate the flower. But because it is impermanent, after a few days, it will wither and pass away. And this energy will go somewhere else. It will make something else. So everything is a constant state of flux. And if you realize that nothing in the world is you can hold on to, you can cling on to, then you realize that this is a very dangerous world. Because there is nothing at all you can hold on to. It's constantly changing, anything that gives you happiness, because it will change, it will go away. That is a source of dukkha. Because whatever gives you happiness, you want to cling to it. You want the happiness to last, but nothing lasts. And so this world is full of dukkha. So that is how Venerable Sariputta attained the first path. And then after that, he was so happy. He went to tell his best friend, Venerable Moggallana. And Venerable Moggallana asked him the Dhamma. And he said the same words that Venerable Asaji spoke to him. And Venerable Moggallana also attained the first path, also became an Arya. So the two of them left their teacher Sanjaya and went to become disciples of the Buddha. When the Buddha saw them coming, he told his other monk disciples, "You look at these two, this pair, they are going to be my chief disciples." So that was how the Buddha's disciples came. And Venerable Moggallana, after he became a disciple of the Buddha taught him the samatha meditation to attain the jhanas. And he struggled very hard. And for 7 days and 7 nights, I imagine he didn't sleep, until he was so tired that even when he entered jhana, he would fall out of the jhana because he was like nodding in sleep. But because the Buddha had psychic power, the Buddha was supervising him all the time. When he dropped out of jhana, the Buddha would come in a golden body. His body will come out of his body, and the golden body will come and wake up our Venerable Moggallana and ask him to continue his practice. And because he struggled so hard, within 7 days he became an Arahant. So Venerable Sariputta also attained the jhanas. But after 14 days, he was still not enlightened, And then on the 14th day, being a new disciple of the Buddha, Venerable Sariputta was fanning the Buddha, and the Buddha was talking to an external sect ascetics, and Venerable Sariputta just fanning the Buddha and listening to this conversation between the Buddha and the external sect ascetic, and he understood the Dhamma and he became an Arahant just by listening. So in 14 days, Venerable Sariputta became an Arahant. And then the Buddha's following of disciples started to grow quickly after that, because his Arahant disciples taught other people, and they also became Aryas, and they also renounced, and the number of people who renounced started to multiply. And the Buddha's father began to hear news that his son became famous. So he sent somebody to invite the Buddha to return to the Sakyan place. So the Buddha came back. And according to the later books, commentaries, that when the Buddha came back, the Sakyans, being a warrior caste, they were very proud, So they refused to bow to the Buddha. So according to the commentaries, the Buddha worked a twin miracle when he came back. This twin miracle was the Buddha's fire, emitted fire. But at the same time, water also came out. Water and fire came out of the body at the same time. And then when the people were shocked to see this twin miracle, and the people became subdued and paid respect to him, then he spoke to them the Vesantara Jataka. He talked about the previous life, how he renounced his wife and children to a beggar. But this description of the twin miracle and the Jataka is not found in the suttas, and is also not found in the Vinaya books. So there is no basis for it. So it must have been added later, because we know that these Jataka tales are like stories, full of animals talking. And then this Vesantara Jataka, where he gave away the wife and the children to a poor beggar who mistreated them, this doesn't make sense at all. Because in the suttas, the Buddha said, a good man's Dhamma does not harm himself, he does not harm others. But by giving away the wife and children, he's harming them, right? It doesn't make sense at all. So the Buddha came back and taught the Dhamma to his father and his mother or stepmother, and they also understood the Dhamma, also attained the Dhamma vision, first path. Then the wife, at that time his son was 7 years old. So the Buddha's wife or former wife told the son, told the son Rahula, said, this is your father. And then he told the son to go and ask the Buddha for his inheritance. He thought the Buddha already renounced, don't want all his property already, that should give to the son. So the son went to approach the Buddha and then asked, then he was very happy to see his father. He said, he told the Buddha, I said, even your shadow pleases me. So then he kept asking the Buddha for the inheritance. So the Buddha walked back to the monastery in the forest, and he kept following, asking for his inheritance. So when the Buddha went back to the monastery, he told Sariputta to shave off his hair and make him a novice. The Buddha thought the spiritual inheritance is much better than the worldly inheritance. So made him a novice monk. So when the Buddha's father, before that, actually that was a few days later. But the first day when the Buddha came back to the house, his brother Nanda was getting married on that day, So there was this celebration, he was getting married. So the Buddha accepted the dana, and then the brother probably went to wash his bowl and was holding his bowl. And the Buddha did not take the bowl back from the brother. Instead, he started to walk back to the monastery in the forest, back to the forest. So his brother, holding his bowl, didn't know what to do, So he probably thought that the Buddha wanted him to carry the bowl all the way to the forest. So he carried the bowl, left the new bride, carried the bowl, followed the Buddha to the forest. Then when he was alone with the Buddha in the forest, the Buddha told him, why don't you become a monk? then he got a shock. But here was his brother already enlightened, asking him to become a monk. How could he refuse? So he said, okay. So Buddha got somebody to shave his head, and then he became a monk. Then a few days later, as I told you just now, the Buddha's son was ordained as a novice. Then after the Buddha's father was very hurt, Then the Buddha's father came to see the Buddha in the forest and told the Buddha, he said, Bhagavan, when you left the home, I was very pained, I was very hurt. And a few days ago, when Nanda also renounced and became a monk, I was doubly hurt. And now Rahula has become a novice monk. He said, this pain goes deep into the flesh and into the bones itself. Then he told the Buddha, he said, next time, if a young boy like this, you want him to renounce, you tell the guardians first, get the permission of the guardian. And then from there, the Buddha made this rule. Any young fellow who wants to renounce should get the permission of the parents. And later this was extended to even older people. But actually, it concerns more of younger people. And then later the Buddha's mother renounced and became a nun and became an arahant also. And the Buddha's wife also later renounced and became arahant also. And then many Sakyans renounced because the Sakyan people, the clan was very proud that one of the Sakyan clan had become a Buddha, Arahant, Sammasambuddha. So they sort of persuaded every Sakyan family to send at least one son to become a monk. So the Buddha's relations, cousins and all that also followed him and became monks. One of them was Anuruddha. And Anuruddha when Anuruddha wanted to renounce, his mother was very reluctant to give permission. And then he kept pleading with the mother. Then the mother thought his best friend is Bhadia, the chief of the Sakyans. Then she told Anuruddha, she said that if your friend Bhadia is willing to renounce, then I will give you permission. And then Anuruddha went to pester his friend Bhadia until Bhadia agreed to renounce. Then the mother of Anuruddha had to give permission. Ananda was another relation of the Buddha who renounced. And at that time when Anuruddha renounced, he went with I think about 7 of them: Anuruddha, Bhadia, Ananda, Bhagu, Kimbila, Devadatta and Upali. Upali was the barber. And then within the first year of their renouncing, Bhadia became an Arahant. Then Anuruddha attained the heavenly eye, psychic power, until he could see 1,000 world systems so clearly like in the palm of his hand. Then Ananda attained the first path within that first year, and Devadatta attained psychic power. Then 3 years after the Buddha's enlightenment, a rich man in Rajagaha offered to build kutis for the monks, and the Buddha accepted, and he built 60 kutis at one time. And then his relation by marriage was a man by the name of Anathapindika. And Anathapindika, on coming to know the Buddha, offered the Jeta Grove or Anathapindika's park, a big monastery to the Buddha. And initially, the Buddha's disciples, the type of robe they wore were called Pangsakula robes. That means they had to go to the cemetery and other places to pick up pieces of cloth and sew them into a robe. And then only after about 20 years, the Buddha allowed his monks to wear robes offered by lay people. And the lifestyle of the monks under the Buddha was to move from monastery to monastery, their monasteries. And their daily routine was that early in the morning, after waking up, when the sun comes up, they would go on alms round, and then they bring the food back, and then they would eat in the monastery. And then after that, they would find a quiet place in the forest to practice meditation the whole day. They would sit under some forest tree and meditate. And after the sun sets in the evening, they will come together. They meet where the most senior monk is, and they will discuss Dhamma. They ask questions about the Dhamma, and somebody will answer. And that was how they passed their day. Then when the Buddha was old, this Devadatta wanted to succeed the Buddha. He asked the Buddha to step aside and let him be the leader. And then the Buddha sort of put him down in front of all the other monks and said, who do you think you are to succeed me, take over my place? I have not even asked Sariputta or Moggallana to take my place, and you dare to say you want to take my place. And the Buddha said, who are you? You are like spittle that people spit out, And he was so angry that he decided to want to kill the Buddha. So he plotted to kill the Buddha. He tried several ways to kill the Buddha, but he was not successful. And because of that, the Buddha said that he was destined for hell. He would go to hell for a very, very long time. And then at the age of 80, the Buddha passed away. And his last instructions to the monks, among his few last instructions, the most important one was that he said after he has passed away, that they should take the Dhammavinaya as their teacher. Not to take any particular monk as the teacher, but the Dhammavinaya. And the Dhamma is explained in the suttas as the suttas, the discourses of the Buddha. The Vinaya does not concern lay people, so that means lay people should take the suttas as your teacher. that is the most important instruction that the Buddha has left behind. So if you want to show some respect for the Buddha, instead of bowing down, the Buddha said the highest respect you can show to a Buddha is to understand his Dhamma and carry out the practice of the Dhamma according to what he has said in the suttas. So I think that's all I have to say for now. This question about Vipassana meditation and jhanas. The monks who teach Vipassana, they teach it on the basis of later books like commentaries and Visuddhimagga, etc. And there is no, they don't follow the suttas strictly. Because in the commentaries, it is stated that there are 5 types of arahants. The first type of arahant is the best type with all the 4 jhanas. Because the Buddha has stated in the suttas that right concentration is the 4 jhanas, right? So they say that the best type of, or the one type of the 5 types of arahants is one who has attained 4 jhanas. The second type is one who has attained 3 jhanas. The third type is one who has attained 2 jhanas. The fourth type is one who has attained 1 jhana. And the fifth type is one who has attained no jhana. And this last one they call the pure Vipassana meditator, or pure Vipassana arahant. But unfortunately, this contradicts the suttas. And the reason why many people follow blindly this teaching is that because they are not familiar with the suttas. Because in the suttas, it is stated very clearly that nobody can become an arahant without jhana. And where is this stated? In the Majjhima Nikaya. I think it is Sutta 64, I'm not sure of the exact number, where the Buddha has stated very clearly that there is a path leading to the destruction of the 5 lower fetters. What does destruction of the 5 lower fetters mean? Destruction of the 5 lower fetters means the attainment of anagami, or third fruition. But the arahant has destroyed 10, that means all the fetters, 10 fetters. That means the arahant has also destroyed the 5 lower fetters. So when you say a person who has destroyed the 5 lower fetters, it means the anagami and the arahant, third and fourth fruit attainer. Now in the sutta, the Buddha said, there is a path leading to the attainment of the destruction of the 5 lower fetters. That means anagami and arahanthood. And the Buddha said, without following this path, it is impossible to destroy the 5 lower fetters. That means it is impossible to attain anagami and arahanthood without following this particular path. Then he went on to explain what is that path. What is that path? First jhana, second jhana, third jhana, fourth jhana. So it is very clear from this sutta that it is impossible to become anagami and arahant without the jhanas. But it is possible without jhana to become sotapanna and sakadagamin. But the problem is nowadays, they like to teach a type of samadhi or concentration called the momentary concentration. And this momentary concentration is putting your attention from one object to another object to another object. But actually this is just the ordinary mind, because there is a sutta given for us to understand the ordinary mind. And that sutta, the Buddha gave the parable of the hunter who caught 6 animals. I think I've spoken this, I mentioned this before. This is about the hunter who caught 6 animals: the eagle, the monkey, the snake, the crocodile, the dog, and the hyena. And then the Buddha said this hunter tied a rope to each of the 6 animals, and these 6 ropes, he tied them into a knot and he let them loose. And what happens? They will be tugging in 6 different directions. The eagle wants to fly into the air. The monkey wants to climb up the tree. The snake wants to go into a hole to hide. The crocodile wants to go to the river. The dog wants to go into town to look for food. And the hyena wants to go up the hill. So these 6 are tugging in 6 different directions. At any one time, whichever animal is stronger, he will pull the others, and the other 5 have to follow him. When he grows tired, another one will pull and the others have to follow him. This is what the Buddha calls an unrestrained mind. And this is, you can see that these 6 animals represent the 6 sense objects. Form wants to pull our attention to see. Sound wants to pull our attention to hear. A smell wants to pull our attention to smell. A flavor wants to pull our attention to taste. A contact wants to pull our attention to touch. And a thought wants to pull our attention to think. So these 6 sense objects are pulling in 6 different directions. And at any particular time, whichever one is the strongest, gets our attention. And after that, another one takes over. So that means our attention is moving from object to object to object. And that's just an ordinary mind. And they call that the momentary concentration. Now this teaching has no basis at all in the suttas. So unfortunately, this is happening nowadays. And the Buddha gave a warning in the Samyutta Nikaya that the true Dhamma will disappear when people have disrespect for 5 things. First one is the Buddha. Second one is the Dhamma. The third is the Sangha. The fourth one is the training. And the last one is Samadhi, concentration. This is what is happening now. People belittle jhana, saying that jhana is not necessary, that jhana, in the state of jhana, there is no sati. And this is not true at all. In the state of the jhana, sati is very pure. In the description of the jhanas, the Buddha said, in the 4th jhana is a state where sati is completely pure. You cannot have a stronger sati than in the 4th jhana. And these people say that jhana, you are like in a trance, as though you are fallen asleep, you don't know. That is not jhana. And the jhana, the mind is very clear.